let's go ahead and make an asset in Blender. So we're going to open up Blender. You can do this in other tools, 3ds Max, what have you. All right, so let's go ahead and add a mesh. I'm just going to use Suzanne. Raise her up a little bit. So Suzanne is an object. This is an object. Suzanne has a mesh, right? If you were to export this directly, just right now, like if you were to export it, right? Legacy DAE, right? Let's go to my Dover level. Art, shapes. We'll make it props, actually. New folder. I like to keep everything organized, so Suzanne. Suzanne.dae. And then we don't want textures. I don't think this will work. Let's try it. Did that. A tab bar. So asset browser, Dover. I'm just going to show you directly where the folder is just so we don't get everything. Buildings, props. Okay, so one thing you need to do when you make a change to the directory, it doesn't show up unless you right click and say refresh directory. And there it is. And there it is. So all I did was create an asset in Blender, or a model, and then export it. It doesn't show up. It's empty. Why do you think that is? If you guess because it doesn't have a material, you'd be right. No material, nothing to reflect light. So we're going to give it a material. So that's in Blender. You go to Materials, New. It's been slow lately, but we'll give it a second. You can keep it called Material if you want, or you can rename it. I'm going to call it, I like to keep it the same name as the object. Sometimes different, sometimes it's parts of the object, right? And we'll give it a base color of blue. It's my favorite color. When you change it to viewport shading, you can see the blue. This is just solid. Right, so now let's export it. Let's refresh. Drag it in. Beautiful. How come it's not blue? Great question. So it's not blue because we just created a random material in Blender. We did not create the random material in BeamNG. So we would need to do that. So the way that we do that is Material Editor. The nice thing about it is it actually does store, because I created the material in Blender and assigned it to the model, the mesh, it does store it. It just doesn't know what that material is. So I can click on this and I can say from scene selection, and lo and behold, I have the material here. It just doesn't bring over the color. So let's do that. We could define the color, and we're golden. Awesome. So that is the barest bones how to bring a model into Blender, or from Blender into BeamNG. Problem with this right now is rendered, but if I go far away, it's still rendered. I don't know if you can see it. So it's the same poly count that it is here, and here, and here, and here. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, this is called level of detail. So typically in games, when you back up to a certain size, the models are replaced, depending on the game engine, with a lower poly version of the model. So you can kind of see this. If done correctly, you can't actually see the transition. You can see this in the trees. Kind of hard to see. Actually, I know an example. Go to the models. CA. Yes, right there. Pretty sure. So in this particular model, the high resolution version is replaced with the low poly version when it backs out. I think it's even more easy to see on the buildings. Yeah, right there. Perfect. Let me go slow. See that? Bam. So right there, as soon as I reach this distance away from the model size in pixels is X. It swaps out the model for a low poly version. And you can't tell because you're far enough away, it doesn't make a difference. But that way you can see it loses fidelity. And the reason it does that is so that it can run. You see how those bottom sections just disappear? Color changes. It can run a lot more efficiently on a game engine, right? So to do this in Blender, I'm just going to show you a house that I've built. You need to give it a hierarchy. The hierarchy is defined as empty axes, parent, empty axes, and then your models, your objects here. So base 0, 0, start 0, 1, and then your models. And then you also need to make sure that the prefix or the suffix at the end is underscore a and then the number. And the number means that when it becomes that size of pixel on the screen, then swap out for that particular model. So think of it as a scale. This is going to be your high model right here, your highest quality, 800, right? When this building takes up 800 pixels on your screen, this is the model to use. If there was another one above it that was like 1,000, it would swap to that one when it took up 1,000 pixels on the screen, right? Then when it zooms out and it only takes up 300 pixels, this is the model to use. This is the next LOD, sometimes referred to as like LOD 1, right? Then when it only takes up 100 pixels on your screen, this is the model to use. And so you can look at the number of polys I have over here, triangles, faces, edges, vertices, and see how they decrease. So that right now, 1,600 triangles, 1,600. 516 triangles, level 2. 301 triangles, level 1. You don't have to do this, but your map will suffer performance hits when you have multiple high definition, no LOD models on it. So the reason I'm able to slide around like this without any performance hits is because these are all properly optimized. We've got some great LODs. Making an LOD is his own video. There's much better tutorials out there than me and what I could make. But essentially, you want to just decrease the poly count. There's ways to do that. You can use modifier, decimate, and it brings your poly count down until it's nothing, right? You lose some of the silhouette by doing that, which is important in 3D assets. So I actually make my LODs kind of by hand. I use, I'm getting into it. I said I wouldn't. If you're interested, I can make a video on that, but I'll leave that there. All right. Okay, so let's talk about bringing that into Blender. Same way, or I keep mixing it up. Bringing that out of Blender and into BeamNG. So there's a couple add-ons that I highly recommend for Blender that are really good. I like different parts of each of them, so I kind of made my own with the help of AI. So let's go back to that Suzanne model. Use this as an example. All right, Suzanne. material, Suzanne, blue. Okay, I'm going to save it. I also like to keep organized folders, so I have a Suzanne.blend file. Okay. That way you know where it's at. Some people include that blend file with their asset. You can, it's not necessary, or with their mod rather. I think it just takes up space. So I only include the bare minimum. Okay. So Suzanne's got a image or a color material. I made this add-on called Mesh Tools, and what it does is allows you to set up a hierarchy automatically, like that. So you already have base, start, Suzanne, and then it copies Suzanne to make an 100 level, 300 level, and 800 level. And then from here, you can delete your original if you want. And then this is your high resolution mesh. So that's good. And then this one we can deform, decimate. Could do it. Let's bring it down to like 500. I'll go ahead and apply that. And then we'll do the same thing for the 100. Decimate. And we'll bring this one down to like 190. Sweet. Easy as that. We've got 3 different levels. High, medium, low. Simple. Notice that the names are Suzanne A100, A300, and A800. Let's go ahead and save that. They do look funny when they're all turned on. Cool. So now, a couple steps to make them clean in order. So we've set up our hierarchy. Now we can apply transforms. This is always recommended to do to make sure that if you've moved one of the objects, that it applies that move and it doesn't keep the history of the move. Just a good idea. So apply transforms, transforms applied to all mesh objects, and then it's also a good idea to triangulate. Next step is clear material nodes. This is just helps reduce the file size even more. We have a bunch of detail about what's on these meshes. BeamNG doesn't need that. All they need to know is that there's a material. They don't need to know what that material image is, etc. So clearing material nodes blacks them out, and it looks bad, like it looks like we can't see it. But when we export it, it works great. So let's go ahead and export it. Oh yeah, and I made an export button as well. And it doesn't have any properties because I like to minimize the amount of steps that you need. So props, Suzanne DAE, exported. Now when we go into the game, Suzanne's center is off. That's just fine. And watch when I zoom out, you see that? The LOD changed just barely, but now it's making it render better. And then LOD changed again, right? This is more noticeable, but when you do it manually, you can really make LODs change without it being noticeable. You have the same texture mapping. You're basically replacing these high fidelity objects, like these right here. Not even that super high fidelity, but and then you're doing basically billboard cutouts of that. So the further you zoom out, the better they look. I'm going to put a smoother on this. Yep. Notice that when you do that, it kind of breaks the material because it's preparing it for export. It's not necessary. You can't really modify it in the Blender. So only do that when you're about to export and always save. Let me open up my Suzanne again. Yeah. So apply transforms, triangulate, and then let's see here. I'm gonna apply a smoother. Yeah, that's pretty good. bad. I like to keep my objects smooth when they should be and sharp when they should not be. A couple sharps here. You can actually look at those sharps as well. Fully smooth. Yeah. All right. So that is the essentials for exporting an object from Blender into BeamNG. I'm going to show you one more added workflow, which is to reference the materials created by the developers. So for pretty much all of my buildings, I'm able to optimize my workflows significantly by referencing not just, well, any of the objects that they create, but I'm also able to reference the materials themselves. So these roof materials, I didn't make those. The developers made those. I just used them. Developers they have it gave you permission to freely use that. This is the tin texture right here, and this is the wood cladding. So when I look at this in the material editor from scene selection, I can see that I'm using ECA, building clean wall, ECA building concrete, modern corrugated tin, roof tiles, and roof wood cladding 01. Pretty great. So those are literally taking straight out of the developer folder. The way that I did that is, I can go into more detail about this, but I created a material library blender. And what it does is it's a folder that has all of the textures. So this is useful for me in Blender to be able to see what the building will look like. Right? Here's the revere. And I use their material. So I created a script that takes all of these and it turns them into material library. And I can show you this if I open the Blender file. If I look at the shading tab. Okay, you can see all of these materials have been created already for making houses. And I can reference any of these developer materials. And the beauty of this is when I export, I can just remove everything, right? I do this, apply transforms, triangulate, clear material nodes. The only thing left is the names and the UV mapping, of course. And then in BeamNG, you've got a super lean file that references existing materials that are already created, already set up, and we're good to go. See how the color map is referencing the original East Coast folder? It's not referencing an image file on my directory, even though the materials JSON file is there. It's referencing the actual original DDS. Sweet. So I'll stop there. If you have any questions, let me know. But I put a lot of thought into this. I think it works really good and optimizes the methods that you need to do to create new assets and to bring them into BeamNG. Let me touch on one more area. Sorry, keep going. We're only at 35 minutes. We're okay. All right. So when you first make an object, static object, TS static, it does not have any collision. You can build this into your blend with a coal mesh. Trying to remember how to do this. You can build it into your mesh with a collision mesh if you want to, simplified collision mesh, or you can use collision type visible mesh final, and it just uses the visible mesh as the collision mesh. Once you calculate this and you're driving around, then you can collide with those objects. Bam. Sometimes they are ineffective, like the pillars over here may not work as well. And I need to create the coal mesh. I need to set that object. Let's do that real quick. Collision type, visible mesh final. And then let's recalculate. And now, yeah, for smaller items, it's a little trickier. So you would probably want to make a big bounding box for that so that it doesn't collide with it. Went right next to it. So it is triggering on the front triangles of the mesh, but sometimes they're small. It'll phase right through. Yeah. So in that instance, a coal mesh probably would be recommended because it needs to be larger to stop the vehicle. Yep. I could try bounds. That might work actually. Let's try that. Nope, it did not work. Unless I didn't rebuild. Yeah, no go. Hoping that the image bounds would work, but it's all right. Okay, I'll stop. I promise. Thanks for watching.